Alright, and welcome back to part 2 of our repairing of this brother multifunction laser printer, the MFC L6700dw. The printer comes under a plethora of different model numbers, but the base engine of the printer is still the same throughout the entire series. So if you've got a 5200, a 5500, 5700, they're all the same printer and they all have the same fuser inside the machines. So, alright, so the first video we showed how to remove the fuser unit from the back of the printer. Now we're going to disassemble it, have a look at the damage, and see exactly what we are in for with this machine. So the first thing we've got to do is we have to remove this pressure release mechanism. What this mechanism does is when you bring it up, it lifts this lever here and it lifts this lever here to reduce pressure between the lower pressure roller and the upper film, so that people can remove paper jams if paper jams get stuck inside here. So what we're going to do first is we have to remove this little black clip over here, which locks this on, and then this entire shaft here can be drawn out and pulled away. So it's just a case of getting your fingernails in there and pushing it through, getting some long nose pliers, pushing them on and pushing them through like so. One thing you have to be very, very careful for is that this clip here is made of plastic. It's not a metal clip, and when you push it off, it flexes and then it springs and it flies away and it gets lost forever, and then that creates a big problem when you're reassembling the fuser unit. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to stop because I don't have a tripod. I'll remove it because I don't want to lose it, and I'm going to do it two-handed. Alright, so I've just put my pliers on the edge and pushed that clip off. There's the clip there down here, and it's just simply a case of sliding this armature off. We then grab the armature over here, and that simply slides out. So we will put those two parts over there, off the side, together, where they won't get lost. Okay, so this top cover on this fuser unit now simply grabs. We need to undo this lead, of course, so we just unravel this lead, and this lead goes up through the sides. So this top cover has a locking pin in here, in there like so. There is another locking pin around the other side here. It's just simply a case of you just grab it, pull it forward and lift it up and away, and that's the cover. Alright, so we've got the cover now off the fuser assembly, and that can get us a good look at the film. So if we grab the gear and we turn it, we can see as I'm turning the lower roller drives the film above, and you can see here that the lower roller, because this customer hasn't proactively sought to have this problem fixed the moment it started occurring. Because the top film is stalled and stationary and fixed, it's resulted in the lower roller being damaged. So it's always, when you start seeing printing quality issues with your printer, it's best to be proactive rather than reactive. So now in this case, because the lower roller has been moving faster than the upper film has been rotating, this whole roll has just been damaged here. And of course that increases the costs of the repairs. So alright, so the next step is we have to undo the springs. So you've got one spring on here, one spring on here. These plates, the pressure plates, are obviously a left and a right scenario, so you have to put them back the same way they came off. Now, to get this spring off, I just simply like to get my long nose pliers with the tiny little bend on the end of it, and we stick it in. And we lift it up. And over. Of course, it's much easier two-handed. The other way we could do is go in that way. Alright, so I've managed to grab an extra pair of hands, so we'll just put this in. And you see we just lift it over like that, and now that is free. And the same on the other side as well. Okay, so alright, so we now just simply lift the lever over. There is a notch down here, and that comes off like so. So that's that side, and over on this side we lift it up and we lift it over. And then what that does is that makes the whole film is now free, and the heating assembly. Now you need to be very careful with the film and heating assembly. Inside of it there is a halogen lamp, and you can break it if you suddenly shock it. And just pull those cables through. And there we have the film and the lower roller we can see. And we can see all the really bad damage that this thing suffered. So to get this roller out, we now need to take this lower plate off, and we take that lower plate off by removing this screw here, and then we remove this screw here. Alright, and then the cover just simply comes off. Now in some of the fuser units, under here there will be a cleaning roller. If your unit has a cleaning roller in here, it will be coated in baked on toner. It is a steel or an aluminium roller, and what its job is to do is to collect any stray toner that's on this roller and simply hold it onto its body. You must clean that roller, and you do that by using some turpentine and some rags to dissolve it. So in this particular model there is no roller here, and we can simply now get access to the roller that's in here. I'll check the bearings and make sure that they're still moving okay. Yeah, this one seems pretty good. So it's just a simple case of taking the circlip which locks this roller on here, take that out, and then we can easily just pick it up and slide it out. So I'll just take that circlip off now. Okay, so I've removed that circlip off of the drive gear here. We will now undo this screw and we will pull this gear off and this gear off together. Alright, so we then pull this gear off, pull this gear off, and that just gives us access in here to pull everything out. Now when you put this gear back on, it's advisable just to smear some synthetic fluorinated grease over the shaft here, and that'll just help this gear along in its second life cycle. Alright, so now it's just simply a case of lifting it up and sliding it out. That's the base. You just need to check the base and make sure there's no bits of toner stuck to the frame. If you find you've got baked on toner stuck on the frame, just clean it off with the turpentine and a rag. Now we just need to prepare the new roller. So this is the roller and sleeve that I have. You can buy this roller on my website, fixitfastelectronics.com. We ship worldwide. And of course, if your lower roller is still fine, you can get away with just reusing your old lower roller. But in this case, we have to change it, and of course that increases the cost of the repair to the customer in the end. Alright, so this is the new roller. Some of them will have ribs up the side of them, some of them won't. It just depends on the particular manufacturer. And of course, as with every other video I've made, there are counterfeit parts as well. And the counterfeit parts, the dead giveaway is when you weigh them, they weigh completely different to the other roller. You'll often find that they are a lot lighter than the genuine roller. And when you put them in, they won't drive the film properly. And you're just back at square one, where you've paid all this money for parts and the parts are junk and you've still got a broken printer. So we just take the old bearing off and we slide it along. And stick it in. Just make sure the bearing is sitting in its recess. We didn't remove the bearing this side. So that's the lower unit. If you get any grease on the roller while you're working on it, it is very, very important that you get this grease off before you reassemble the whole assembly, because if you leave this grease here, it forms a hot spot and it will damage the surface of the upper film. So I'll just clean this now just to get all that nice and clean, and then we'll set this unit aside and begin working on fixing the film. Alright, so I've just cleaned that roller off. I'm just letting it dry off. What we're then going to do is reassemble the gears back up. So we will stick the drive gear back on. You just want to make sure that the roller has got free travel play and that the bearings haven't binded up here. If you find your bearings are going a bit stiff, you can just push into the bearing some fluorinated high temperature grease, which is also available on my website. And okay. The other thing you need to pay attention to is that this gear is two-sided. You have this side, which has the recess in it, like so, and this side, which has the flat side. So this simply goes in with the recess pointing inwards. So, and then we'll just stick the circlip back on and we'll smear some fluorinated grease on the shaft here. Okay, so we've got that gear back on, we've got the circlip on, and I've just smeared some grease over the shaft, some fluorinated grease. We'll stick that over and we will put the screw back in. Alright, now that's ready to go. That's driving really well. Now we need to move on to putting the backing plate back on. Now, it is really important with this backing plate that it is clean. If you have any chunks of toner that have baked on and accumulated along the edge over here, the moment you put it back on, and that edge, if it has baked on toner, sits here, what can happen is the baked on toner can get in touch with the lower roller, and the moment you fire the printer back up after you've reassembled everything and fixed everything, if there's any hard baked on toner on this plate coming in contact with the roller, you will instantly, it's just, I've made the mistake once before, you will tear this brand new roller up, and then you'll have to go back to square one, buy another lower roller and do the lower repair all over again. It's a mistake you make once in your career fixing printers and you never make it again. So I will just take this plate, which is grubby anyway, and we're just going to grab some turpentine, and we're just going to clean all this up with the turpentine, particularly the underside leading edge where it cuts in. And lifting it up and doing the leading edge in. You just got to be careful not to go too hard because the plastic itself will get dissolved by the turpentine. Turpentine is the only thing that dissolves toner powder. effectively. Alcohol or methylated spirits, it does kind of dissolve toner, but it is a really weak solvent where toner is concerned. So most toner powders are made from crude oil anyway, so you need something that's part of the same family to dissolve the compound. So you can see there's quite a bit coming off this unit. So I'll just finish that off and then we'll move on to the next stage. Alright, so I'm just getting into the ridges of this guiding plate and just cleaning out. There's quite a lot of toner built up into it. It's just the idea is to make the path that the paper follows as smooth and as slippery as possible. Any build-ups of toner that's baked on will get in the way, and then you'll end up with paper jamming faults. There you go, that looks pretty good. So it's just the case now, I'm just flipping it around and sticking it back on. Stick the 2 screws back in. There we go. Let's go over it with the rag and clean it. Alright, that's the lower portion of the fuser unit now rebuilt. We'll put that aside and then we will move on to doing the difficult part, which is the film. Alright, so we got the film over sitting this way. We need to remove this guide here. So what we'll have to do is lift the sensor cables up and out, and then we need to undo this clip and it slides upwards, and then because this clip locks the guide plate on, and you have to be really quite careful because when you undo this here and there, so you need to slightly push it apart ever so slightly and slide it. Now it's really very easy when you separate, because it's just plastic, when you apply pressure and separate it apart like that, so pulling it apart, you can break this plastic locking bit, and that's a bad thing to happen, obviously, because it's really quite an important part. So just Alright, so I've just carefully, ever so gently, pried the plastic apart, and that's released the locking pin that's inside here, and now we can slide that off. So I'll just show you where the locking bits are. So if we look, look at this part just up here. And you can see where the plastic locks just there, where my fingernail is. Tiny little lock there. And then that just locks onto the edge of this white plastic here. So now that that's free, we'll put that aside and simply grab the guide and we pull it out. Put over, and then that comes out and free. And then it's just simply a case of sliding the film off. Actually, we will just, so we just want to lay down some fresh paper. Ideally, you'll be doing this at a much cleaner environment than I am. We just don't want to get any little specks of dust or dirt inside this film on the heating assembly, as that would be bad. So now we just slide her off, and here you can see, holy hell, look at the damage on that. Now for some of you watching this video, you won't need to change the film. We're only changing the film because we have this damage to the surface. Yep. So let's pull that off. It's very important that when you pull it off, you don't let the sensor cables catch on the edge of the film if you're going to be reusing it. The worst thing you can do is to get a little nick or a crease or a cut in the edges of the film, because that basically spells the death of that film. Because the moment you put, if it's got any little cracks in the edge, the moment you put the film in, the film starts rotating, the cracks will just simply tear the film apart, and the film will tear wide open. So just be really careful on the edges of the film that the sensor cables are not getting stuck on it. Holy hell, look at this thing. This has to be one of the worst I've ever seen. So if you're going to reuse your film, if your film is still okay and the surface of it is undamaged, you can clean the inside of the surface. You have to get all the grease off. So when we're rebuilding this unit, we need to clean all of this up. It has to be spotlessly clean. We simply clean it up once again with our rag coated in turpentine. Do not use alcohol, do not use methylated spirits. Turpentine is the best for this job. So it's just a case of just cleaning the whole thing up. What also works really well is white spirit. It's a really refined, the really refined part of crude oil. If you're really desperate, you can also use petrol. So clean all this muck off. So So I think you'll get the general idea. You've just got to clean all the grease, all the baked on toner. Man, it's no wonder this unit doesn't work. So, alright, so for those of you who are going to be reusing your films, if you have a look inside this film, you can see all the grease and the toner that's been dragged in. It's simply a case of finding a screwdriver. It has to be nice and quite smooth, and you need it to fit snugly inside there. What you do, this is my method anyway that I've been using for years, is you coat the screwdriver in your film, you coat your screwdriver with your rag, and then you stuff that inside. You have to be really quite careful. Like, I might need a smaller screwdriver for this. You have to pay attention that when you're doing this, going inside the film, that you do not crack the edges of the film, which is very easy to do. So, and just carefully bring it in. So yeah, now I'll be doing that. I'll just pause and come back. Right, so I've got the screwdriver and the rag in there, and it's just simply a case of dragging it in and dragging it out ever so gently. Cleaning the inside of that film out. Pull that out and have a look now. Yeah, so I'm not too fussed. I'm not going to reuse this film, but it's just for you guys to see. It's just a case of, once you've cleaned it, then go and grab another bit of clean rag, and you do a final wipe inside, coat it with some fresh terps, and just make it absolutely spotlessly clean in there. The other thing, do not squeeze the film. If you dint the top of it in one particular spot, that then creates problems with the film when it's driving in the machine later on. Alright, so I'll just put that aside, and I'll finish cleaning this bit up, and we'll be back in a minute. Alright, so when we're cleaning it, we've got to make sure we clean the ridges of the guides as well. Just make sure everything is as spotlessly clean, and every single trace of toner from the previous life cycle and grease is gone. Otherwise the new film will get contaminated, and it will have a very short lifespan indeed. Everything clean. By the way, if you're in the Brisbane or Gold Coast area and your printer is suffering this issue, you can, if you don't want to do this repair yourself, you can call me up and I will come out and do the repair for you. Just give me a call on the mobile phone, my phone number, which is in the channel's description tab. Or go through to my website, fixitfastelectronics.com or .com.au. I own both domains, and get my phone number from there. And what we do find when we're cleaning and repairing these units is that People that just can't resist buying the really cheap nasty toner, which is in the case of this customer, I think. Maybe I'll have to go and check back through the records. Yeah, there's two types of toner powder. There's what's called CTP toner powder, chemically produced toner, CPT, and mechanically produced toner, which is just ground up plastic or carbon with resin added to it. And of course, the really cheap stuff is the mechanically produced, and it throws toner just all through the guts of the printer. Alright, so that's looking a lot cleaner than what it was. I'll just do one final clean with some fresh paper laid down, so we're not getting all this crap back on the thing, and then we'll move on to installing the film. Alright, so we've cleaned this part up as best as we can. It's a million times better than what it was. Now, also, when you're working on this, you need to pay attention to the spring that's over here. Try not to bend. If I can get that into focus. The spring, that's just an earthing spring. Just be aware of it when you're rotating the heater around. Just don't bend that. In fact, I may have already bent that. Anyway, we'll deal with that at the end. So it's just the case now. We want to lay down some new paper, make the working area clean, spotlessly clean, that there's no dust or dirt going to be getting in. We want to make the inside of this film as clean, as dust-free, as dirt-free as possible. So we clean up the work area. We go over, we do one final clean with some fresh rag and some best turpentine, maybe a little bit of alcohol at the very end as well. And then we'll start the assembly procedure, reassembling this. What we also have to do is, I don't like wearing gloves, but if you've got gloves, change your gloves and go wash your hands and clean up any stuff, impurities that you've got all over your hands as well. So I'll just go do that, and we'll come back and we'll do the reassembly stage. Okay, so now it's time for reassembly of this unit. You need to get your fuser grease. You can buy this fuser grease on my website. It's a special fuser grease for Brother fusers. Do not use Hewlett-Packard fuser grease on this, as it doesn't tend to work very well. HP and Canon fusers have a ceramic heater plate, and that ceramic heater plate heats the surface of the film. Brothers use a metal heater plate to heat, and the film is a metal film. So you've got metal rubbing against metal, so it requires a different grease formulation to make it work. So one tub that you buy on my website does about 5 to 6 fuser units, or it means 5 to 6 times you can overhaul this unit and then get back on with your life. So it's just a case of just taking some grease out of the tub and applying it to the surface of the heater plate, like so. You also need to apply grease around the ridges of the guides on both sides. And you need to apply grease on the plastic edges. So I'll just grease this up and we'll come back. Hopefully we won't run out of daylight. Alright, so the birds have decided to go off now, so we've got our heater plate there all greased up with our film. We have greased all around the guides here and around this guide here, and now we're at the reassembly stage with our film. So we just clean our hands off of any grease. We'll grab our film, and you just need to be very careful in the reassembly of this film not to dent it, scratch it, tear the edges or anything. We want to just to make sure that the film is the correct size. So we just measure the old film against the new film. Yep, that looks good. We're good to go. So we just take the outer protector cover off, and then we need to slide it back on. You need to make sure that there is no dirt in the grease. If anything's gotten in, just get it out before you put it back on. So I'll just get this out. Oh, so gentle. Okay, this is our film. Now the films come with a paper insert to keep them taut. Now I might need another sheet of paper. Okay, now it's simply a case of getting the cables inside the film. Come on. Sometimes I wish I was born with 3 hands. Or I actually got around to buying a tripod. And then we just carefully slide the film over, trying not to scrape off as much grease. If you're scraping grease off and it's building up on the edge here, just smear it off and then try and smear it inside the film. And so we'll get that back on, and you need to pay attention to the black cable down here. Make sure that goes on the inside as well, obviously, and we'll get that film back over and on. And move on to the next step. Okay, so we're just sliding the film back on and avoiding getting any dirt or scraping the grease off in the process. Okay, and we tip it over. We stick our guide back on, being mindful of the sensor cables. Like so. Then we take our clip. If you have broken this clip when you've been disassembling it, simply get some super glue and super glue it back together, and then let it sit 24 hours for the super glue to dry off to form a really tight bond. You've got to make sure the pins here, the locking pins there, match up with the locking pins on the bottom over here. and then run our cables through, black first, and the white cables. And there we have it, the fuser film is fixed. So we just want to move it around a little bit to spread the grease around, and then at the very end we just want to clean the surface of the film with another clean rag and some turpentine. And then it's just simply a case of reassembly. So I've got that the wrong way around. Let's set that up so we can see. Now the sensor cables go through that hole there. And then we drop it down. Alright, so we just need to run the cables now around and down. And I tell you what, at this place, there's always some bird crowing or carrying on. And the crow today, crowing his heart out. And have we all noticed that there's fewer bugs hitting windscreens these days? I wonder if all those nicotine-based insecticides have got something to do with that. Alright, so that's there. We now want to got our plates back on, left and right. Oh, hang on, I think it's left and right. Yeah, that's the one for that side. That's the one for that side. And now we just got to get the springs and hook them back over on both sides to get the pressure plates, putting the pressure back on the film down on the roller. Okay, so we've got both springs hooked back up on the pressure plates, and now we just simply want to grab the gear here and make sure that everything is rotating the way we want it to do. Now you want to turn it in the way that the paper comes through. So we're turning it up and we're ever so slightly rotating the film, and we're spreading the grease that's inside the film around. You want to do this before you put it back in the machine, because you do not want the machine to heat up to 200 degrees Celsius and then rotate. Okay, and that looks like it's rotating really well. Okay, and now we'll move on to the next step and put it back together. So we grab our top cover, chuck it back on. Need to make sure that this cable here is bent up, otherwise you won't be able to get the cover back on. And you need to make sure that it is locked in underneath there again, and the same on the other side. Make sure it's locked in on the peg under there as well. Alright, we take our shaft, we stick our shaft back through the hole, all the way through to the edge. We make sure this is up like so. We grab our other piece and stick it in over there. And then the most important bit, the plastic locking circlip. Got to be real careful when you put this back on, because if you don't do it right, this thing goes flying and you'll spend forever trying to find where the hell it landed. So grab it, stick it on and push it on, and I'm going to do that and come back because I don't want to lose this. Alright, so that's all on, circlip's on. And now, ta-da, we have a fully rebuilt fusee unit, ready to go out for its next life cycle. And with my little secret that I showed all the people that purchased the repair parts off my website, you will get a substantially long lifespan out of this part. Stick it back in the printer, plug it all back in. And hopefully we don't run out of sunlight. Oh, the wife comes out and asks me what I'm cooking for dinner, because I gotta get this finished. There. And grab these plugs. You've got to be very gentle plugging them in, because if you break the circuit board, you'll be in for a major headache. Just carefully make sure they're lined up with the key. And just carefully just push it in. And the white one. cables, stack them in. Alright, and we find the cover plate. Where did we put that? Oh, sorry, I'm going to show you that, eh? Okay, so you got the locking bits up the top here. They go into the locking bits up here. And I swear this phone has just got problems with focusing today. Something bad at the top. There we go. You'll hear that little click sound when it's in the right position. Grab our screw and stick it in. And then over this side, we need to grab the most important part, which is our earthing spring, which I taped to the side of the printer so I didn't lose it. Cannot stress how important this silly little part is, and how a whole $1,000 printer comes down to needing this part to not blow up. Grab the spring, hook it around the spring up here, and then we hook it around the earthing plate there. Like so. Alright, what's next? What are we up to? We need to put the screw in to lock the fusee unit. We need to put in our pressure release plate, which is this, which goes in here. Of course I broke this pulling this out, not so much for drama, as that is held in by this cover plate. You got to make sure you get the beveled edge down here inside over here. Right, are we in right? Yep, I think we are in right. Shove our screw in and do it up. Make sure the pressure release is working. So as I pushed up here, one over there comes up as well. Doesn't move much, but it moves enough to release enough pressure so people can get a paper jam out. Alright, and we stick our inner door on. Inner door's on. Now the outer door's a bit tricky to get on because you've got to get this pressure release up under this while it's under pressure. So we stick it on like so. We get the other side locked in. We It's much easier when you got two hands, obviously. Now the older this machine gets, bending this black plastic, the more gentler you have to get as the plastic gets brittle. And over here, and it can snap in two once it gets too brittle. So, done. I'll now take it inside, plug it in, and see what the next repair that we have to do is on this printer before we take it back to the customer. Alright, so we've got a printer back up. We will alright, so what do we got? We've got the drum unit in, that one, and we will go on. Now that we've got it all back together, you just want to open and close the door a few times to get everything rotating and to get that grease moving around inside. Alright, so now we'll do a test print. Yes. Alright, so I've got another problem. Alright. Yeah, that looks a million times better. This phone can get it into focus. Put the previous thing on there. Let's do one more. There we go. So yeah, if you look at the blacks, they're a lot more crisper. There's no fuzziness. If we go up to the check boxes, you can see no more fuzziness. Let me just see if I can find that previous test print. Alright, so I've just found the previous test print, so here we are as a comparison. Come on, focus. So this is how it started out. So if we zoom into the check boxes, actually put them side by side. So there you can see instantly, instead of the blacks being a grey colour because the toner has smeared, the blacks are now solid black. And we look at our check boxes with the lines and see it's all grainy, and that one is perfectly crisp. So I could make that even better if I wanted to for the customer, as I can still see errors in the print. Let's compare that to that. So there are still errors in the print quality. You particularly see it here. You can see there's vertical white lines in the gradient, so those vertical white lines are coming from the fact that the development roller on the toner cartridge is polluted. but the quality is acceptable, and more importantly, the machine is no longer paper jamming, and the customer is not paying me for a refill of that cartridge or for a replacement. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope this helps you out to get your printer problem solved. If you're in the local Brisbane or Gold Coast area and you need this or any other printer problem fixed, you can come to my website, fixitfastelectronics.com.au. Give me a call, I'll come out and fix your printer for you. The parts used to fix this printer are available on my website as well. There will be a link below. We ship worldwide for free. And what you can guarantee is that the parts that you receive will not be some Chinese counterfeit knockoff. The parts will work, and they are guaranteed to work if you apply them correctly. Just as the grease that we use in repairing this printer, which is the crucial part to getting the parts to rotate efficiently, is also the correct, and in fact I think it's better than the genuine Brother Fuser grease. We've tried using the genuine Brother Fuser grease, which comes from a Korean company, and we've just found that the grease that we've decided to use in our printer workshop simply works better and lasts longer. So that's it for today's video. Yep, thanks for watching.